From the college by the lake, meeting the personalities and discussing the issues that affect all of Coeur d'Alene and the Inland Northwest. We are the North Idaho College Public Forum. And now here's your moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
Welcome to the final week in our series, The Issue of Censorship in America, Is the First Amendment Dead? This is the 6th week, and as many of you viewers have noted, over the past 5 weeks, we've really looked in, I think, great depth at the First Amendment, and in doing so, we've been very fortunate to have guests from all over the United States who one can really classify as experts in this field. I always feel that it is improper to conclude such a series without having an overview, and maybe we call it a debriefing of all the activities and discussions that we've had during the series. I want to start by thanking once again the Idaho Centennial Commission, because they gave us a grant that made this possible, along with the North Idaho College Convocations Committee, and this particular series has been sponsored by the North Idaho College Popcorn Forum series, but without those two organizations it would not have been possible. I've invited what I consider 3 very special people to the program today to join with me in talking about this series and reviewing it. First of all, a very outstanding student at North Idaho College, and if all students were like this, we would be a Harvard of the West, because she is truly outstanding. Welcome Deborah Akers, who is the managing editor of the North Idaho College student newspaper called The Sentinel. We're also very pleased to have Sue Flamia, who is an attorney, and she's also a member of the Idaho Centennial Commission. As a commissioner, we thank her for not only the grant, but all the work that she's done in this series' success. And third, regular panelist Janelle Burke, who's an attorney and is just always here and has been for 17 years, and we're grateful for all the contributions that she makes to this program. I would like to start out the discussion by going back and letting our viewers know that this just didn't happen last week or so, that this has been a long process. And Sue, since you have been involved from the very beginning, would you share with our viewers how this came about?
Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure. I had the wonderful opportunity to serve on the Idaho Centennial Commission, and I chaired the Arts and Humanities Subcommittee, and we had wonderful opportunities to create new projects and so on. And I was still concerned, though, and I said to our chairman, Harry Magnuson, who's from Wallace, I said, now, Harry, we really must do something to think about the future of our state. So he said, yes, I agree. So we brainstormed ways that we could give the people all over the state an opportunity to talk about the future of our state. The result of that, and that was about 3 years ago that we began this thinking process. A special steering committee was created to develop what became to be the Second Century Project, in order to make opportunities for discussion of the future available throughout the state. The committee decided, and the commission approved, $5,000 grants to every institution of higher education in the state of Idaho, 4-year and 2-year schools.
And we attempted through this process to talk about the First Amendment, not only in its historical perspective, but I think the discussion this week's had a lot to do with the future and what the amendment will mean to us in the future. Would you agree?
Yes, most definitely.
With that, let's go through the week. And again, I hope there are a lot of viewers out there that have been watching all this series. And let's start with the first day. We had a really well-known international person in the name of Dr. Riane Eisler, and she talked about her book, The Chalice and the Blade, but also not only the history of the world and many thousands of years, comparing what she called the dominator model with the partnership model, but she tied that to the First Amendment, and through that process of denying people rights, that you also deny them expression, for example. And I'm going to stay with Sue for a moment, because I know, Sue, that she has written a lot of work that you've read, and you were so excited and you were so involved with her coming here. Give our viewers kind of an overview of what you think that happened on that first day.
I think that it was a very special opportunity to listen to Dr. Eisler discussing her theory, which, as you say, covers the millennia and many, many, many civilizations. To have her talk about the First Amendment in relation to the history of people of the world. So that she was saying that the issue of free speech is something inherently of concern to us as human beings, because we're the only ones with language per se, and that we had originally the gifts of civilization, which included the search for wisdom, systems of justice that were fair, and so on. And then we shifted. We had a paradigm shift that then became this dominator model. And now we understand, we who are concerned about human rights for every person on the earth, whether regardless of age, regardless of race, and so on. It's very important that we strengthen the foundations of free speech within our country and globally. And that's how she was able to pull her overall conceptual framework into a discussion of the First Amendment, freedom of speech, which is very important for all human rights.
Janelle, how do you react? I know you interviewed her and also heard her speak.
I thought her partnership model was particularly interesting, and she pointed out with the partnership model that people are more productive when you're working in a partnership model, whether it be at the home or at the workplace, wherever. So I thought the partnership model was very interesting. And then I thought that her partnership and dominator models helped to explain some things that we view around us. For example, home situations where there might be a problem within the home, violence or whatever. World situations. And she reviewed various countries that have problems. Relationships between parents and children, how all of those can be explained to a certain extent by her partnership and her dominator models, and I thought it was a very interesting comparison.
Deborah?
Throughout the week, I missed the first day, but we had some very exciting conversations on censorship in the First Amendment and regarding rap music, particularly the debate between Jack Thompson and Tom Morris.
I was going to build that bridge and come, because I know that you were very much a participant and observer in that process. And why don't we do that? If I may just say one thing before we get into that, and that has to do that as an observer myself at the panel. We had panels in the afternoon following the speakers, and I was really taken by the fact that several people in the audience, as they got up, they would talk about the families you're talking about, Janelle. And in each case, as they were talking about change, they were locked in mentally, many of them, to someone has to be on top, someone has to be in control. And one participant in particular, I think my children have got in control. And another lady got up and said, you're locked into that kind of thinking process. Why does someone have to be on top? Why can't we deal with partnership? And I think that was an interesting point. But I do want to go back to Deborah and talk about the fact that we had Jack Thompson and John Morris here to debate what we can sell or distribute, and the music was there. And I would just like to ask Deborah to take some time to critique that particular day and that particular issue.
Boy, it's real interesting because you can see both sides, and particularly as a woman, I did respect Jack Thompson for him wanting to eliminate anything that he felt could contribute to rape. However, being a First Amendment purist, or trying to be a First Amendment purist, I can't advocate anything that is advocating censorship. And therefore, I think that the points that Tom Morris had to make were particularly important. I would say that the majority of students at NIC probably sided with Tom Morris's viewpoint in wanting to leave lyrics untouched and alone, even though they may be obscene.
I want to proceed a little further with Deborah. That is really a dilemma, isn't it? Because some of the lyrics that one finds in rock music and other things, some of those lyrics do promote or advocate some violent action, whether that's an expression or whether it's a suggestion to carry it out. But again, like you're saying, the preciousness of the First Amendment, I've worked on that in my own mind too. And how do you resolve that? How do you go about, in particular after this forum, has it been made any easier to deal with? How do we protect people's freedom of expression and at the same time protect individuals from violence?
That's a topic that I think that we could probably continue to debate forever. And we were speaking earlier, we didn't know who had said this, but it was a beautiful quote, that truth is the eternal conversation about things that matter, conducted with passion and discipline. And I think that is particularly important in this case.
How about the other two panelists and that issue?
I'm interested in what Dr. Eisler said about, all of us agree, I mean, I would assume we're agreeing that we don't want censorship, but we do want accountability. And I thought her example of the lawsuit against the Ku Klux Klan and the resultant judgment of a substantial amount of money is the way it's a better way to handle these things. So we're not saying you can't do this, but we're going to say if you do it, you're going to be accountable for the damage that you cause.
Can we just back up and give some background to the audience? We're speaking of a case in Alabama where 3 Klansmen met at their headquarters and discussed supremacy and hate and racism. They could meet and do that, but then they decided they'd go out, and the first black person they found, they would kill that individual. And unfortunately they did that, and he was a young 19-year-old man. They were tried and convicted of murder, but Morris Dees and the Southern Poverty Law Center then came in on behalf of the mother, and they sued them civilly and won $7 million in addition to the criminal conviction, and they had to take the building of the Klan and give to the mother. So it wasn't their meeting, it wasn't their speech, it was the action, wasn't it?
And the accountability for their actions.
Yes. Janelle?
And I think we were discussing a little before the show, educating people to be able to say, no, I don't like this. The economics of the situation. And that, of course, is one of the things that Mr. Morris kept raising. What are young people doing with the kind of money that they will need to spend in order to buy tapes that are violent in their nature if they're very young children? But so possibly educating people to be responsible, say no, look for the kinds of things that you really want to grace your life with.
Deborah really triggered my thinking to go with her comment, and what just came to mind in relation to that was the debate again, and that's why debates, I think, are very good between Morris and Thompson. I recall Thompson saying during the debate, and gave an example of someone who had been sent to prison for a very violent, brutal sexual act against another person. He said, I can prove the problem because he said that individual had read some what he considered obscene magazines, and said therefore they should be very possibly brought off the market. Morris countered with the fact that Manson, who we know was a very vicious individual, said that he read Revelations and then went out and committed the murder. We don't suggest censoring the Bible. So it sounds like, Deborah, that it may go beyond the literature too, or if someone uses a car to murder someone, we do not eliminate all cars. I just want to get you to react to what I was reacting to.
That's a very good point. I had forgotten that particular point in the debate. I think we can, if you don't mind, continue to carry that forward into what happened the third day with press censorship and responsibilities and accountability. And this is a debate that's ongoing right now. We're seeing it on the news, and it's something that will be, I'm sure, continue to be talked about for several months, and that is, was the press censored in the Gulf War? Did the press say too much? Should they be accountable for some of the things that they said? And then, Janelle, what you said regarding partnerships in the family, I think that could be carried on also farther by saying that the media and the government need to develop a partnership. In my perspective, some of the things that happened during the coverage of the war was that the military did a very good job of censoring. They were doing their job. As a journalist, I probably will be attacked for making this statement, but I don't think that the journalists did their job. I think they should have been more innovative and found new ways of getting information out, or rather than filling dead airtime with speculation, that they could have filled that with teaching us about the Saudi people. What is the Saudi culture like? Over the last 6 months, I would like to ask anyone what they know about the Saudi people. We were spending our time shedding blood, spending money over there defending the Saudis, but who were we really defending? I think some of that empty airtime might have been better filled with what is the education system in Saudi Arabia? What do they do for recreation? Do they have bowling alleys or movie theaters? Things of that nature.
NBC reporter Richard Valeriani was our speaker for that day, and he really did spark some interest. I wonder if the other two panel members would like to react. He too, like some quotes that Deborah's already given, he had some really powerful one-liners, I think, too, concerning the media. How would you like to respond?
it was fun to have Mr. Valeriani here because many of us have watched him on national television, and so it was just like having this person here. But it was very interesting because he had a good overview of the history that led up to some of the things that are happening now, and because he has been involved in the media and in the news process for a long period of time. And he talked about some of the ways that the current censorship, if you will, the pool, was arrived at because of the progression of what was happening. One of the interesting things that he did say is that the reporters do report what there is there that comes to their attention. They do try to report. They do try to take the things that are important. They come to it, of course, with their own feelings, with their own backgrounds, but they do try to give people the information. And so I thought that was interesting, and I think that he did, of course, make a plea for continued First Amendment freedoms. He had an interesting calendar with him that had a quote about First Amendment freedoms for every day of the year.
But he had some real powerful statements making. Deborah may have some of them with her, but I know one that impressed me. He indicated that the argument over whether we should report good happenings or bad developments, and he says that something to the effect that the reporting of tragedy or bad news, the only thing that is worse than reporting bad developments is not reporting it or not knowing it.
The example that he gave is every day there's planes taking off and landing, and we don't report that, but if a plane crashes, then we do report that. And therefore, the media is too often seen as only reporting bad news. And I like the term that he used in calling journalists, or many people refer to journalists as restless voyeurs.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful, isn't it? I do have a question for all of you I'd really love to get a reaction to before we go on to the issue of religion in the First Amendment. I think Mr. Valeriani made a really historical development of the reporters were very free in Vietnam, and when that did not go well, they were blamed for that. And then when Grenada came, there was some, obviously, denial of reporters to have access the first 3 days. And then Panama, and said by the Desert Storm, they'd really learned how to develop the pools. Do you think that reporters will ever again be as free as they were in World War II or in Vietnam to report, or is this something that has been lost? I hear what Deborah's saying about they can find innovative ways, but really a different system's been set up as far as the military is concerned, hasn't it? Do you have concern about this?
Tony, that's one of my greatest concerns, because, and I thought Valeriani was right, we should be flying a yellow ribbon for the First Amendment. When those controls are in place, and when the media cooperates with all of those controls, which meant practically no reporters were on the front lines, and anything they wrote was censored, and it wasn't sent then to their headquarters, it was sent to other military headquarters within this country. And some of the print stories were so stale, you know, a 24-hour delay on a story meant it didn't get published. I wonder if the media shouldn't take it upon itself, print and TV media, it's critical to reclaim those freedoms, or don't play their game. Don't go and report their war unless they're going to change the ground rules.
I asked Mr. Valeriani about this too, and I guess I did a little bit like Deborah. I'm a great believer in freedom of the press, but sometimes we have to take responsibility ourselves. I asked him, I said, one reason why they agreed to the pool, wasn't it, way back before they knew how it worked, is that if they didn't agree to the pool, some other entity in the media might do so, and they'd scoop the story, or what there was of it, and you wouldn't get it. And he said, yes, that was one of the problems of agreeing to it, the eagerness to be part of it so you'd get some news. Isn't that a lesson for all of us, whatever we do, to be very careful about the agreements that we make? Would you like to react to that, anyone?
I think he did indicate that some of those agreements were made without understanding fully what was going to be the end result, and that possibly there would be some efforts to change those. I also would like to go on to make another point, and that was with regard to First Amendment and other countries. Mr. Valeriani indicated, and he has certainly traveled all over the world, that there is no other country that has quite the same First Amendment freedoms we do have, and that in many countries there's not even an understanding of freedom of speech, that the people generally consider whoever is in power to be in control of the press. That's just a given conclusion.
Even in a country like Great Britain, that they don't have that
Yes.
First Amendment protection.
Not nearly to the extent we do. And that in many countries it's synonymous with whoever's in power. Whoever's in power controls the press, and people understand that and accept that. They just simply accept it. Whereas in our country, we count on the press. We rely on the press in large part to keep to balance the power in our country.
That's exactly right. We do need to make sure that we're taking some serious steps to preserve those freedoms. And if we don't, and we, as Valeriani said, if we continue to allow the First Amendment to be chipped away at, the First Amendment is soon going to drown in a sea of exceptions.
Well put. Bill Wasmus was with us on Thursday, and for our viewers who are now watching this was back in March that we had the symposium, and he gave an eloquent presentation on the First Amendment in relation to the No Establishment Clause and the free exercise. And he talked about religion, in many cases, being a victim and suffering because the religion's not the dominant religion. He also talked in a very honest, candid way that religions oftentimes are the perpetrators of persecution of other religious organizations or churches or synagogues, are those who are not religious. Who would like to critique what Bill had to say? I thought it was a very powerful speech, and I think he was, am I correct, he was there to really defend tolerance and to say that you can believe strongly what you wish to believe, but and you can be evangelistic in promoting it, but don't tell me I have to believe it and behave that way if I choose another path.
And I thought that, I agree with you, Tony. I thought his speech was a very eloquent, very thoughtful presentation. And I was intrigued with his analysis of as we shift from what we would have thought of as center toward the extreme right or left, although his concern was the shift in our country right now toward the rightist, absolutist positions. And as more and more pressure comes to bear on officials, that these shifts go on, and then we begin to think, well, these shifts are mainstream rather than the more extreme position that they do represent. And any time those shifts occur and they're absolutist opinions, you know that freedom of speech will be suffering, will be impinged upon by those who are able, because of the shift in mentality, to say that it's our right then to tell you how to believe or what to say or what not to say.
Anyone else like to comment on that? The panel, too, followed up with a really lively discussion. I mean, between the panel and the audience, it was just fascinating. But one panel member indicated during the discussion that oftentimes when there is this intolerance and friction between different religions, that it's oftentimes out of insecurity, that you may have 50,000 members in a given locality and my religion may only have 10,000, and you get very worried that somehow the rightness comes in numbers or that you're going to be overwhelmed. And I thought that was really interesting explanation of maybe what is part of the driving force. And that panel went on to indicate, though, that if you're really, really secure about what you believe, you don't need to worry about whether it's the largest number or not, or you're not worried about someone advocating a different religion.
One thing that he said that I thought was pretty powerful was, if we go out and we do something good, or if we're deliberating whether to make one choice or the other, we react by saying it was the Christian thing to do.
Yes.
And then he went on to say, but what's the Jewish thing to do or the Muslim thing to do? And when he said, what is the Muslim thing to do, a number of people in the audience laughed. And that made me start thinking back to the freedom of the press and what we covered in the Gulf here recently. Maybe we should have been educating more people about what the Islam religion is. That wouldn't have been such a funny comment that he had made if we had been doing that.
But it really verified or validated the problem of the process, isn't it? That we are so conditioned, And it's not showing disrespect for any religion, Christianity or otherwise, or for those who are not religious, but it's just that the training is so intense that you automatically think of some things good and some things bad. And out of that comes a lot of intolerance, doesn't it? That also, does it not endanger the First Amendment? If you don't get past that and have that real desire to, through control, I guess one way that we'd try to summarize that would be the First Amendment really demands, does it not, you can believe whatever you wish, but not to what I call inflict it upon someone else if they choose not to have it. We need to go on to the last day. We had Dr. Brian Johnston, and he's an expert from Willamette University. In fact, he's Associate Dean of the Law School on conflict resolution. And I'm going to yield to Sue Flammia, our expert in North Idaho, and tell us something about what he means by such things as arbitration, mediation, negotiation, and some kind of peaceful resolution of conflict.
Thank you, Tony. And I thank you also in planning this week that we are given the opportunity. This is an open program that will be for conflict resolution. We are in the process of trying to create alternative dispute resolution. It's a nationwide effort through the legal profession, and locally we have a group of lawyers who are interested in peaceful settlements who have created the Conflict Resolution Center. The services are available there, and it's mediation primarily, which is different from arbitration in this way. In arbitration, the litigants, the people who are fighting, decide they will invest a third person with power to settle their case. Mm-hmm. It's short of a court procedure. Mm-hmm. In mediation, there's a different process, a different way of looking at and analyzing fights so that you help the litigants find common overlapping areas of self-interest, and they then solve their dispute and you guide them along, but you don't tell them what to do. And this is an effort that is being used in the courts. The courts are recommending settlement weeks and so on. So it's a very special privilege to have Dr. Johnston come to Coeur d'Alene to work with lawyers, educators, people in the mental health professions, and we hope that this will be a movement that will spread throughout, and I believe that it is.
Thank you. Believe it or not, we have about a minute and a half, and I want to give all three of you a chance to very quickly say, of the symposium and the study of the First Amendment, what has it left you with that's most important? Janelle, would you like to start?
I probably would say that it's the partnership idea keeps floating in my mind, that it's really important to have that partnership and for all of us to be able to say what we think.
Okay. Deborah?
I guess I would have to agree with that statement, because I still, a real powerful thing for me is with the press freedom and what the military censorship has, and there's got to be more of a partnership agreement there.
Sue?
And with partnership, we will all be empowered. It's empowering children, male, female, all of us, and we will lead more productive and more creative lives.
Thank you. What a wonderful note on which to end this program. Thank all three of you for an outstanding program. And ladies and gentlemen, this brings our series to a close, and next week we'll discuss a different topic. I so hope you've enjoyed this series, and please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
North Idaho College Public Forum is videotaped live by Telemedia Services on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to catch the North Idaho College Public Forum the same time next week on this television station.